And I'm sorry about that, but the YouTube technology is smarter than I am today. So, for those of you just joining me, I'm Steph. I am the Steph of Steph Uses. You can call me Steph or Stephanie. Please don't call me Steffi. That's reserved for family that remembers me when I was young. But I'm been a glass user for 10 years, and I started a YouTube channel because I wanted to help educate people. I've got some notes over here. If you see me glancing off screen, that's why. Um, I'm trying to get to all the questions folks asked when I ask for help, as well as, kind of just go over a bit of who I am, what glass is like right now if you were going to get started, how to organize, which, if you can see behind me, I don't do very well, and a few other things. And isn't this Hello Kitty mug cute? I've had it for years and I just love it. The back, which has my lipstick on it, says Hello Kitty. But I just love Hello Kitty Vampire. Let me see if my mother has found me yet. All right, let's see. Share, copy link, send it to my. There, I should be back. Hi, Lynn, how are you? Glad somebody found me. Yeah, unfortunately, for some reason, YouTube wouldn't let me do the actual link I sent, so I had to reset up a whole new stream. There we go, there's people. Hello, folks. And I'm sorry if my internet cuts out. I am in my garage. Some days it's great. Some days it's dog shit. And today it's decided to be a little bit of both. So that's not much I can do. Thank you, Lynn. I appreciate your help. Wow, up to 6 people. Hi, y'all. I was expecting like my mom. Oh, Eris, I love you. Thank you for tuning in. I was honestly expecting like 2 people, so this is a lot more than I thought. Okay, I have people. This is great. Well, I'm gonna start over because I did like 5 minutes of wandering and yapping to myself, so we'll start over. You all know me, but for anybody who's watching this that doesn't, I'm Stephanie or Steph. Please don't call me Steffi unless you have a family connection to me because that makes me feel about that tall again. Um, I've been a glass user for 10 years, and I have notes on what I wanted to go over today. Yes, there's several pages. But I'm also here to answer questions if folks have, but I thought I'd give you a little bit of a background on me and how I got into fusing. And excuse me, I just burped. And into glass itself and, how to choose it, how to get started, how expensive it is, because it is expensive. And then some organization, scaling up your glass work, pricing, how to sell, which I don't do very well. And a little bit about my YouTube channel and how I do it, and then answer some questions at the end that people have asked. But if you do have a question for me, by all means, ask in advance, and I will happily answer. I've been a glass user for 10 years, but more about me, even though you guys know me, I know that there'll be folks that are watching this that don't. I am a truck driver of all things. I test prototype trucks. And no, I don't test the autonomous trucks. So that is done in a different facility. And that is something that I think all trucking companies are doing, or not trucking companies, trucking manufacturers. But the company that I work with that is contracted to a trucking manufacturer does not do the testing that I am aware of, at least not in my location. I have a wife, lovely wife of 7 years. Her name is Cassie. We've been together 18. We live out here just outside of Portland, Oregon, with my grandmother. She lives in the upstairs of a house that she's been in for 52 years or 54 years. And we live in the basement. We're there for her in case something happens because my grandmother is 92. She had a stroke this year and spent some time in the hospital, but she's surprisingly independent for a 92-year-old woman. And because I know, I believe it was Zach that asked, I have a cat. That is my pet. His name is Mozzie. He is my joy. He's a big fluffy white cat with a black tail, 2 black spots, and a black chin. He might be a Turkish fan. Most likely he is a garden variety house cat that got lucky on a style of color. But I love him to pieces. Yeah, Aussie is one of the best cats on Facebook. Absolutely. He is such a joy. I love this cat to pieces. He was actually trying to get me to come out and come out with me to the studio, but I don't let him out here because this is not a cat friendly location. I don't want those little paws to get shards of glass. My grandmother has a 12-year-old German Shepherd named Cody. Occasionally, Cody tries to come out. Again, I just try and keep all the animals out of here because I just don't. I don't want anybody to get glass in their feet. I mean, if I have to wear shoes, I'm not putting shoes on the cat because he's gonna go like this and walk funny. And while that would make great TikTok feed, um, it still wouldn't get him out here. He'd just be pissed at me and like poop in my shoes. So yeah, I have Mozzie. He's great. I have a wife. She is wonderful. She is definitely my better half. And we live with Grandma out here in the Pacific Northwest outside of Portland. Um, Joe asked me, why did I get into fused glass? And the story is kind of funny. Y'all remember Groupon? Like, it was really big about a decade ago. And at the time, everybody was like, oh, yeah, let's sell things at 50, 60% off. You can get $1,000 of laser hair removal for $100. Oh, you almost took a job with them? I wonder where you'd be now if you did that. That's kind of interesting. But I know they're still around, but they don't offer nearly as good a deals as they used to. But I think it's ultimately a more sustainable model to offer a discount of 20% to something. Oh, yeah, probably, Eris. Probably. It's probably just as well you didn't. I'm happy to have you in the Northwest because that means I might actually get to see you once in a while. But yeah, I was Groupon crazy. If it looked remotely interesting, I bought it. In fact, I have an expired coupon to Dan and Louie's Oyster Bar, which I'm not even sure is still around anymore. And I always wanted to go. That's in downtown Portland. So I'm by my way. Isn't my mug cute? Hello Kitty. It's got lipstick on the back. But isn't that darling? I got up at 4:30, so please don't judge me. I work nights and weekends. So it's coffee time. But yeah, I bought Groupons for everything. Mostly food places because it let Cassie and I find the Oyster Bar is closed now. That's a bummer. Yeah, I always wanted to go to Dan and Louie's. But we bought Groupons for everything because we're adventurous eaters. We'll go anywhere that sounds remotely interesting. And actually, we found a couple of really nice places from Groupon. But one of the things was instead of it being like a $200 or $300 class, Aquila Glass School, which is now closed, they were offering $100 for an introduction to fused glass. And I took it, but at the time, I was still over the road long haul truck driving because we did it for 4.5 years. And it turned out to be dumb luck that I got a local position in November of 2011. And then Cassie got one too. She got a temporary that turned into a permanent. So I had this Groupon. It expired at the end of February, March, something for the glass school. I didn't think anything of it. I was just like, I spent $100 on it, but I don't consider Groupons that expire and I don't use wasted money. You did too, JC? Isn't that crazy? It's funny how you get exposed to this stuff. But yeah, I'm driving along in my semi one day, bobtailed. So just the semi tractor, the power unit, no trailer, because I'm headed down to Cheka. I'm still new to this place. I'm not new to Portland because I grew up here, but I'm new to where all of our trailers are with the company I was working with. So I'm going down, it's Columbia. I'm going down Columbia with just the power unit to check on a stash of trailers in this location of Portland. And I'm like, that place looks familiar. And I had a smartphone at the time, 2011. There were still smartphones. They're a little bit more rudimentary than we have now. But I got down to the place, we called it Bullet. It was actually called PS Trucking. I get down there, I pull up my phone, I start digging through the Groupons, and I'm like, Aquila. I did pass Aquila. Maybe they can tell me more about this fused glass thing because it's going to expire. Maybe I could take another class. Because back then, I don't know if it's still true, but back then you could use whatever you paid for the Groupon towards services at that business. So if you paid $100, like I did, I could spend $100 on a different class and then just pay the difference. So I pulled in in a big, bright red sleeper cab semi. And their driveway goes up about 6 feet to pull in. It's a real steep curve. So getting in was really exciting. I nearly got hit by a school bus. I pull in and I park, and by the time I pop out of the truck, I got people out the door looking at me. Because why the hell is there a semi in my parking lot? I pop up and pop into Aquila and I start talking to them, and they're like, well, we oversold more than we wanted. So, well, not more than we wanted, more than we expected. So we're extending out the Groupon's date to be good for an introduction to fusing for another 3 months. So if you want to take a class, your Groupon will be good until it expired in the end of January, February, so they extended it out to May or something. So I hopped in and I hopped on the class and took it, and I had a great time. And I do not have any of the glass here anymore. Well, I don't have it here in my shop, but I do have all my glass. It was an 8x5 plate that they slumped just slightly in a plate mold, a shatter bowl, which is the ones that you hit with the hammer that I did the video on. It was those two pieces, and then some little 1x2 and 1x1 magnet pieces. 2 were a tack fuse, so you could get an idea, and then everything else was a full fuse. And I was hooked. Absolutely hooked. So this was early 2012. And so I went on with them to take the second class from the Intro to Fuse class, which was squares and rectangles, which if you watch my 500 subscribers giveaway, there's a piece I'm proud of that I show up on the screen, and it was cranberry glass with irid and gray. And I did the squares and rectangles with it. I went back, I did a casting mold from Color de Verre. They offered a class on that. So I did a casting mold. I did torch making for fusers. So I torched up a bunch of stuff and learned the rudimentaries of torch. Hey, Jameson, nice to see you. I'm actually surprised you're here. I'm just going into my background on glass because I found it through a Groupon. But after torching, I took the bead making class, which used 90 as well, because I work mostly in 90. But I also took a class in borosilicate. And somewhere I've still got the glass cube I made and a few other things. It was a lot of fun. Borosilicate's weird to me because when you torch 90, it's closer to honey in texture. Borosilicate's like working Laffy Taffy. It's really kind of interesting because it's not something I was familiar with. So my problem with going to Aquila is after that I was hooked. So they rented kiln time. So I bought my first set of glass and learned from my fail. I bought clear, white, red, aventurine green, and the royal purple with irid. Beautiful set of colors, but none of them work together unless you pair the white with them or the clear. I mean, you could do red and green, but it was very Christmassy, and this was again in, I don't know, May? Yeah, I took my mother to a class, I took my grandmother to a class, I took my cousin to a class, I took another friend. She went with me to like 3 classes. So I became like the Aquila cheerleader. But yeah, it was just Aquila. I left my glass there and I'd work, but I always wanted to work at home. So I started setting up, you can't see it right here and I'll show you, but I have a work table that's my desk from when I was in college. So what I do is I'd make everything and glue it down, and then I'd take it to Aquila, which was over an hour away. Oh man. And this was 2012, so I mean, I was like, I don't want to spend $1,200 on a kiln. So I'm going to rent kiln time. It was really cheap. And I was buying half sheets and they let me store it there. So, I mean, my startup and use their tools. I mean, eventually I bought my own tools so I could play here, but it is, I mean, you're looking at $2,000 to start. And hey, it's raining. But the colors didn't match real well. And I was taking them in. I drove a smart car, which if you're not familiar with, at the time was one of the smallest, it's really raining, was one of the smallest street legal 4-wheeled vehicles in the United States. They don't sell them in the US anymore, which is a bummer because they're fun little cars. But it has no shocks. It's like driving a Tonka toy. So getting it up to Aquila, everything would break loose of the glue because I used hairspray. So I have to get up there, re-glue it. They would dry it. And then they would, so it would hatch, and then they'd put it in the giant kilns they had, and they had big bathtub kilns. Well, they'd fuse it, and then they'd slump it for you. Well, depending on what you wanted. You could have a fuse, a tack fuse, and then you could have your stuff slumped if you wanted, and you put it up on the. They taught you how to do it on a sheet. So I had a load of stuff fused and then slumped. It didn't turn out quite right because I was a new fuser. I had some pointy edges, some pokey bits, uneven glass. I wasn't real happy with how it turned out. But they were already slumped into bowls, so there wasn't a whole lot I could do. So I thought about it, and I talked with my grandmother, and she agreed that this is the studio I'm in, is my grandmother's old wood shop. Because she did wood cutouts and lots of cute things and signs. She's a retired art and English teacher. I come from a family of artists and crafters. My mom's side of the family is all silversmiths, bead makers, knife makers. My mother's dabbled in just about everything. So my mom's side of the family, my grandmother was a sewer. Her father was a sewer, and he sewed down to his wife's underthings as well as stuffed animals and things. I have a leather maker in my family, or a leather tooler in my family. So there's a lot of craft stuff and art in my family. Um, where was I going with this? So my grandmother was, oh, that was it. My grandmother was really cool with letting me take up part of the shop because she's got, like I said, she's 92. She was 82 at the time. She wasn't really doing it so much anymore, so she let me take over the shop. And in June of 2012, I bought my very first kiln. It was a Paragon benchtop 14, and it boiled my glass. Which is ridiculous. I mean, you'd think, you're like, how does it boil glass? The thermocouple was off. And I found out because at the same time I took a pattern bars class from Bullseye. And because I'd taken some basic intro to pattern bars, I'm reaching one of the pieces I made. Because I took classes from Aquila and they could verify that, and I bought a kiln, they let me take the class as an absolute newbie, which is kind of funny. But I took the class, and it was great. But one of the things they did is this is made by stacking 2 colors, 8 pieces thick, so it makes an inch, and then cutting them into cubes and setting them in a round mold and melting down. You can see piece, 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 and you can see where it melted to fill the gaps. So you can see a piece in the center, and then all the pieces around. And in here was the squares, because I cut them chunky. Well, I wanted to recreate it at home, so I went home and layered up black and white and tack fused it, and it came out as a puddle. And I went, that's not right. So then I 14-inch kiln, 12-inch kiln shelf, so I decided I was going to make myself a pretty big plate. 2012 stuff was not very bright. And I had this beautiful royal blue and white streaky. So I put it on the shelf, and I fused it. When it came out, all it was hairline cracks. It was spidered completely. So I scooped up a bit of it, and I scooped up the puddles that I made, because the class was still ongoing. And it was Jim Weidler, I think, was teaching it. I brought it in, and I go, what's up with my kiln? And they go, okay, here, try this test. And it's the Bullseye kiln test that I think everybody, I don't think it's Bullseye, but it's a kiln test where you put dams in, you put glass across, and you fuse to 1150, and you hold it for 10 minutes, and it tells you where the warm spots are in your kiln, because everything's supposed to sag uniformly if your kiln is uniformly warm. At 1150, everything hit the ground of the shelf. And I'm using standard kiln posts, so like inch and a half. I'm not even kiln posts. I'm using, flying shit. I'm using dams. I got them from Bullseye. These I got from Portland Water Jet. But this is the dam I used, the sort of dam I used. Everything hit the kiln shelf at 1150. I'm gonna break something today, just watch. So it confused the hell out of me, and they're like, your kiln's defective. Ordinarily, we don't do this, but because it's been like a week and a half and you bought it from us, we'll exchange it. So they exchanged it, and now I have my other kiln that's sitting right over here. And I'll show you. I'll take you on a tour of the shop. It's a Chaos Monster's dream. They gave me a different Paragon benchtop 14. It fuses absolutely beautifully. I love this kiln. And I used that kiln in 2015 when the thermocouple, or not thermocouple, the relay died. I was getting married, and I panicked. So my grandmother goes, let's get you a new kiln. Well, Bullseye had the 16-inch benchtop with a 3-button controller. And the reason I don't go bigger is I don't have 240 in my shop. All I have are wall outlets. So he picked me up a 3-button 16-inch kiln. And it was a gift from my grandmother. I finished all my wedding favors, which were 5-inch bowls and plates. They went like hotcakes. Everybody loved them. Well, I made like 65 of them in like 2 weeks. My wife and I decided to get married and plan the wedding in 3 weeks. I'm talking the entire thing. We bought our wedding dresses on a Monday. We got married on a Thursday. Thursday, we went shopping for shoes. I press ganged my mother into being my wedding planner. She can attest to this. She's Andy from Oli. I can attest that I press ganged my mother into being my wedding planner. And she roped the whole family into helping. And that is the only way I managed to get married. And have as nice a wedding as I did. It was a backyard wedding. But I made all of my favors, and then we just filled them full of candies and candles and things like that. I told everybody when they came by, your wedding favor for my wedding is a bowl. Just hunt around on the tables and take what you want. Man, it is really raining out. Good thing the cat didn't go out. He'd be soaked. So I had my 3-button 16-inch kiln. Everything went well. And then in like 2016, 2017, they came out with one that has a Sentry 2.0 12-key controller. It was a surprise you came down and suddenly you were my wedding planner, but you were the only one I know that could set up a small city and take it down in 3 days. For those that are wondering, my mother used to be a concessionaire and frequently would set up at fairs and be in charge of making sure everybody set up somewhere between 1 or 2 and like a dozen different joints, which are the food options, and then handle payroll for 55 people, or up to 55 people, or 60. And she's the only person I know, and that side of the family are the only people I know that can, essentially make something from nothing in no time flat. So she absolutely was invaluable. But yeah, Paragon came out with the 12-key, and I wanted a 12-key because the 3 keys are really nice, but they only hold 4 programs and 5 speeds. I wanted something with more programs because my 14-inch had a fuse, a slump, a tack, and then it's still programmed for drop vases. And I don't have one here to show, unfortunately, but I had the mold where you dropped them out of the ring, and it had the little foot on the bottom. They were round circles. And so, it was a complicated schedule, so I didn't want to mess it up. I only had the 4 things. So I got my money together and bought myself a 12-key. And that is where I am now. After I got that, I sort of noodled around for a few years. But the big thing that really made me start making glass essentially in production form, and this has been from 2021 onward, is that I launched a Kickstarter. Yeah, of all things, a Kickstarter. I conceived of and executed a Kickstarter in 6 hours. I woke up and went, I've got a lot of glass. I'd like to do some more glass, but I don't have, glass is expensive. Like Jameson said earlier, and I have a feeling he probably had to duck out, but glass is expensive. You're looking at 120 to 150 a sheet to start anymore. Up to, I just checked Bullseye's website, and gold, purple, transparent, irid is $435 a sheet. And I'm in Portland. I can get to Bullseye, so it's not, I don't have freight, so it helps. But that's still a lot of money. So, I thought, I'd just gotten those 9-heart cast iron pans, and watched the Glass Hopper video, and I went, maybe I could kickstart some hearts, and some of the extra money would let me buy some glass. So I did. And I conceived of the whole thing, like I said, in 6 hours. I got it up, I got it established. And it took somewhere between 4 and 6 days to fund. I set up a $1,000 goal. It took between 4 and 6 days to fund. I never expected it to fund. To be honest, I was totally gobsmacked it funded at all. Because I figured the worst would happen, I'd put it up, it would fail, I'd be done. It ended up with a final total of $3,800. How large are the sheets? Sheets from Bullseye are 20 inches wide by 35 inches tall. They come with rolled edges. Do yours come with rolled edges, Lynn? Like, do you have the sort of well, do I have a piece here? This piece doesn't have a real good example, but you can see here on this piece how it's kind of, this piece got tripped over and broken. But you see how the edges are sort of wonky? That is what comes out with Bullseye, and some of them are a little more obvious than others. Um, but yeah, I'd love to know, do you get those edges? Or is that a unique to Bullseye thing? And while I wait for I know there's a time lapse for me talking and you guys getting this. So my Kickstarter ended up funding about $3,800. I bought a whole bunch of glass, which I will show you guys in a bit. No, they do not. Interesting. I wonder if yours come better trimmed. I mean, I don't mind the rolled edges. They're kind of hard to cut. They're, like I said, they're a little bit hard to cut, but they're fun for projects. I will say that. And if you watch something like Jameson's videos, you'll see he uses a lot of rolled edges. But in the end, I bought a bunch of glass. I ended up buying a bunch of opals. Yes, I've never cut 96, although with the volunteering, we're going to start using 96. But actually I cut one piece for my mom. I cut some Fusers Reserve, and it cut like butter. That was ridiculously nice. It was the easiest glass I'd ever had to cut. But yeah, I do think Bullseye has a better color palette. I think it's because they're bigger, they can afford, excuse me, some of the things that, I think they can afford some of the things that are necessary to make colors that smaller providers can't. Because I know at some point, I want to say it's Oceanside, is it now? Was talking about they can't make a whole bunch of really rich pinks because pinks take gold, and the amount of gold they would have to buy and keep to make a batch, they'd have to make a really big batch, and they would not guarantee that they'd sell it in time. Or not sell it in time, but sell it quickly enough to recoup the cost because of the gold. Whereas Bullseye is just, I mean, Bullseye takes up a whole city block. I'm actually going to see if they will let me sneak in one day with a camera. Not sneak in, but go in one day with a camera and interview them. And show you what the Bullseye Resource Center in Portland looks like. It's big. And then the rest of the block is the facility, which I wouldn't even be able to be into. But yeah, no, like Tecticut's really nice, and Transparent's cut really nice on Bullseye, but I struggle a lot with opals. I tend to get a bit of sharding at the end because of those rolled edges. What I tend to do is once I get down to about a half sheet, I cut the rolled edges off. So I cut down the sides. So then I've got like an 18 by 17 sheet or an 18 by under 20 sheet. And then that makes it a lot easier for mine to cut, because also my cutting table, which has a system on it, only cuts comfortably about 19 inches. So the rolled edges kind of get in the end problems because they're thick. And my cutting table is not ideal. But it works really well. I'm not going to complain. I mean, this is... Let's just put it this way. This is privileged glass cutting problems. So that's the easiest way I can put it, is I'm privileged to have the glass cutting problems I have. Oh, that would be great, Mom. I bought 5 pounds of scrap that I'm going to turn into dots and little squares and stuff. But this month's class, and in case you don't know what we're talking about, I volunteer at a art literacy group in Oregon City called Soul Flags. And right now I'm cutting up squares to turn into dots, because we're going to try Equinox Glass's Harvest Corn as our November project. And then in December, I'm going to try and get some green... Get some green 96, and we're going to make Christmas trees, and some white, and we're going to make snowmen. So that's my goal, and then I don't know what I'm going to do for class in January. Yeah, and Lynn has been very kind to offer me some fusing schedules, because from what I understand, folks at Fuse 96 are a lot more conservative about their schedules. Sorry, I've got a terrible itch. Folks that Fuse 96 are more conservative about their firing schedules. I am really reckless with my glass because I know my kilns and I know what they will and won't do after 10 years of working with Bullseye. I don't know Spectrum other than cutting and fusing that one piece for you, Mama. I haven't touched it. So I have a whole new ballgame to learn. But I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be fun to be able to work with Spectrum and teach the kids. And what I'm hoping to eventually do is switch us over to Bullseye. But we're going to use up all the Spectrum first, and there's a lot of it. There's probably 15, 20 pounds of scrap. But yeah, Lynn has been most helpful, and I appreciate it. And by the way, in case you're tuning in and you're wondering, Lynn is the one who won the 500 subscribers giveaway. She took a gift card to Delphi. Delphi? However you pronounce the glass place. I think I've always called it the wrong thing. So that's what she took. And I'm going to be doing another giveaway at 750. Where was I? Kickstarter. That's where I was going. But this is a live stream, so pop in your questions and comments. I only have a running commentary going because I wasn't sure anybody'd be here and I wanted to just at least have something. But I see there's 7 of you, so I'm really impressed. You're all awesome. Delphi. Yeah, that's how I've always thought about it. I've heard people call it Delphi, but I've always pronounced it Delphi. But again, I could be wrong, very well. I'm wrong about a lot of things. Oh, red and white canes, nice. Dan Halveland does some really beautiful canes. I did a little quick video on them. I gave my mom one. So I get my canes from him. I get my canes from Tabitha. I've got an order coming from Tabitha. But aren't these pretty? He's D. Haviland Glass on Facebook. Actually, I have a video that has a link to him. But he's not selling anything right now that I really, really want. I love canes because they make great little dots. Let me show this one. They make fantastic little dots. And then I did some bigger pieces that I'm going to turn into pendants because I've got those clear bales that my mom shared with me. Oh, that's cool. So you live down the street from Delphi and took the stained glass classes there. That is really cool. I've always wanted to do stained glass, and for me, the place in town to do stained glass is Melt. They're up in Vancouver, Washington, so they're about an hour and 10-minute drive. And Sherry, who owns Melt, is super nice. In fact, if you work in Co 90, I really, really recommend buying your Dichro from Melt because she sells it in quarter sheets. And when you go, I don't have a piece on here, but when you buy from like Bullseye or somewhere else, you get 2x2, 3x3, or 4x4 squares. And Sherry at Melt sells quarter sheets for like, Bullseye sells 3x3s for like $14. I can get a quarter sheet from Sherry for like 60. 4 times the cost. Now, granted, when you get a quarter sheet, and I've got a quarter sheet here, I'll show you what they look like. This is actually from Coatings by Sandberg. I went and saw them in September. This is what a quarter sheet looks like. So as you can see, you're going to have cuts where there's rounded edges. But you know what? A lot of us work with small pieces. So it's totally cool to, and I'm sorry, I wore the wrong shirt. It's way too low cut. But it's, you can work the small pieces in. There's absolutely no reason not to, well, everybody knows glass is expensive. Jameson said it. So we use all our parts. And so I thought this one was really cool. This was CBS. You'd think CBS would be a great big operation, but CBS is actually in an industrial park, and they're like one of 3 people in a building that's a small city block. They have like 4 spots they do the glass in. They're vacuum chambers, and they're very, very expensive. I got the tour. They're really cool. But they're not a big operation. When they, I actually have some of the glass you made, Mom. I've still got pieces around somewhere. But yeah, their showroom to buy things in is a closet that's like 6x12. It's really tiny. They got everything arranged really nicely, and I'll show you the other thing I picked up. I picked up more, but this is my piece de resistance. What's funny is I would think that a lot of glass places and stuff aren't as big as you'd think because they're really efficient with how they store things. But yeah, isn't this pretty? And what you can't really see, let's see if I can turn the camera and you can see it, is it's purple blue once you hold it to the light. I want to turn it into a bowl that is just, not the whole thing, but I want to do like a 5 or a 10-inch bowl that is just Dichro because I can. Yeah, I mean, I just think maybe places are smaller. Like Melt's not very big. The showroom for Melt is about as big as my studio, which is a one-car garage. Um, and they've got room in back to work. They've got a whole classroom in back, and then Sherry has space upstairs. So the showroom's only like a third the size of the space they have. But upstairs is all office and inventory, and then there's have the spot in the back. But the actual part of Melt that you walk in when you buy glass is probably not much bigger than my studio. What I'd really love to see is how big AAE is now that they've moved to Henderson. Because I know Tanya said, I'm pretty sure, didn't she say she was getting rid of the showroom? So it was simply going to be mail order only? Because they're in Henderson now. And I'm curious to see how big that'll end up. I would have loved to see an AAE in Florida before they moved. Just because I'm always curious. Oh, they did? I will have to look for that. Now, do you pronounce your name JC? They did an online tour. That's really cool. I will have to look that up because I'm always curious. Bullseye's resource center is actually pretty good sized. Now, the resource center itself is not huge, but I got a 4-car garage and it's that big. Jackie, you pronounce it Jackie. Okay. I wasn't sure, and I don't want to be like stumbling over your name the wrong way. But yeah, Bullseye's is as big as a 4-car garage, but behind them they have the open studio, which is half again bigger. And then they have the basement. And if you work in Bullseye and you can get to the basement, you really got to get to the basement. It is where they store all their Curious glass. Curious is something that does not live up to Bullseye's impossibly high standards, whether that happens to be that the color is slightly off or there is a very slight flaw in one spot or another. All of that glass, rather than being crushed down and turned into frit, is put in their Curious basement. And their Curious basement is probably close to the size of the resource center upstairs. They call it the basement because you go down a ramp and you're actually down on the concrete floor. And as you come down the ramp, it's really great because on this side, there is all the cutting tools and the jars of frit and everything. It's their inventory. Is on gorilla shelves, or is on, big industrial gorilla shelves on this side. This side you can just sort of see down into it. They also call it the bullpen. And then as you look straight forward, all you see is row upon row upon row of shelves and glass. And that is where all of their top grade is that they pull for online orders. Or if you tell them, I want a full sheet of this, that, and the other thing, they go pull it because the Resource Center only has 10 by 10s and half sheets available up top. Anything you want in a full size, unless it's just, occasionally they have special production up there too. But they go and pull the full size glass you want and bring it to you. But as you go down the stairs, you see this, and it's just like a hallway of glass. It's just stunning. And then you take a left and you come into the bullpen, and like I said, it's almost as big as the Resource Center. And the outside edge, it's a rectangle. The outside edge is shelving that is, I'm having a brain knot. The outside edge is shelving, and then the inside has another set of shelves. So you walk down and it's glass on either side of you. And they have all of their 2mm, which they only sell in half sheets, on right as you walk in and right to your right. And then they have a little section of half sheets of 3mm. And then one whole wall, both sides, is their Curious glass. Also down there is where they sell the non-fusible, because the non-fusible is also upstairs. But the full sheets and non-fusible are down there. And some of the most popular stuff that sells that is fusible are full sheets down there. And all their special production, which their special production is stunning. I buy mostly special production if I'm not buying Curious because I just love their stuff. But yeah, the bullpen is, and the basement is just amazing because Curious is like 40% off retail. So that, and now a glass is like 150, so 40% off would be like $60. $70. So instead of it being 150, it's like 90. I'll take it. It's definitely a lot cheaper. So most of my glass comes furious because I can cut around the errors in it. I don't do proper production, and anything that's a flaw, if it's not an inclusion that's something that doesn't belong, like a speck of metal, any of the flawed bits just go right into my scrap bins, and then they get turned into hearts, because most of my scrap turns into hearts. So, I mean, Bullseye is really cool, and if they will let me, what I'll do is I'll put my phone on a selfie stick, and I'll see if I can go in and give kind of a virtual tour, because it is really fun. What was that? You use stained glass infusing? Now I've heard that you can do that if you use the same, like you said, using from the same sheet of glass. I also know that you can take stained glass and like put it over, you can see right here, I've got those little post molds that you drape over, and I've heard you can do that, but that glass sometimes will change color. Like Bullseye, at least, they can't guarantee the colors will stay if you heat treat them in a kiln. They had some really pretty, it was kind of an opaline, so it was like a milky transparent, and it had all these like dots in it where you could see through it. And I'm like, man, I really want to turn that into tea lights. It looks really cool. And this was back when Andre was still there, so this was a long time ago. And he's like, if you heat it, all these little dots are going to disappear. All these little circles of clear that where it's thinner than others, they're going to go away, and you're going to be left with a uniform sheet. So don't even bother. And I was so disappointed because it looked really, really cool. Yeah, and see, that's what I worry about, is it changing color on me. And I mean, like I said, maybe I'll buy some eventually and try it over to make little tea light holders, but here, I'll show you guys. I have another glass. Oh, horse. This is a handmade for my birthday. This is where I keep all of sheet of gold purple. I bought it as furious on their sale when it was 60% off. There's no way I'm spending $400 on a sheet of glass. Here's the blacks. These are solid opals. This is my translucents. I don't have nearly as many, and that's actually what I'm going to run a Kickstarter for this year. Where's my hand? Right there. As you guys are back. These are, forget it, we'll just do it this way. Hold on for the camera shake. Sorry. There we go. But you think, etc. I'm going to have to stand back, unfortunately. Can I zoom in? I can. So those are the Mardi Gras. And then next to them are all of the Bullseye streakies that I love. And I've got some really stunning pieces out there. But because my connection out here sucks, I am going to have to kind of hold on to this and sit where I'm at, where I've got connection, and show you my studio from here. So hang on, we're going back the other way again. Okay, hiding there in the corner with the colander on top. That is my 16-inch Paragon with the 12-key display. The colander's on top because I've got dots in it. You can see my kiln shelves below. And behind them are all of the cast iron heart molds that I have ruined. I highly recommend that if you want to make hearts, you spend the money and get the Firelight Forms 9-pan heart, the 7055, because I've had 8 of those. No, I've had 9 of those. I had one that had several hearts get stuck and get ruined. But I've ruined one in like 700 hearts, whereas each of those only gave me like 300 hearts before crapping out. Yeah, if you're looking closely, you can see that one of them is busted. Then as we move this way to the Chaos Monsters lair, that is my grinder that my mother gave me. It's probably older than me. That is a wood cutting machine. And then that is various sorts of... and you can see the remnant wood shop in here. This black thing here is a light box. That is a piece I will show you I'm super happy about doing. That's a clock. I am currently tables off of bottles. Yeah, they're really popular. And Firelight's a small company, so it will take them a while to replenish the supply. But here we go. Right there is a rack you can buy from Bullseye that holds all of your stringer and noodles. Next to it is the stuff that doesn't fit because the tubes are too big and on my rod. And then here is the frit. I have a lot of frit. Somebody asked how I store things. Because I teach classes out of my house, I don't organize my frit, and I should. But that frit is, my students are always getting in. And so I just stuff it back on the shelf to keep it off the table. So as you can see, it is not particularly well organized, short of the 5 pounds up top. Stringer organizer is purchasable through Bullseye. I want to take you down. You can see my desk. There's my notes. We've off from the notes. It's cool. I am trying to learn how to make these little flowers. So I can make my own lamp-worked flowers. I'm having some trouble with them, but I haven't had a lot of time to practice. Down here on the floor, which is going to be moved, is my 14-inch that replaced the 14 that boiled glass. That is my trusty little workhorse. I have a cart for it, but I haven't put it together. Up here, underneath all the paper from Bullseye, are a whole pile of wine bottles for my wedding. They're actually Martinelli sparkling cider bottles. I don't think we had a lot of wine. And my Taurus ring saw. And then over here, my workspace is where chairs go to die. Right there, let's see if it does it. Right there is the new cart that I need to set up. This is where office chairs go to die. And then here, it is not a small collection. I love Slumpy's Bargain Basement. And that right there, that silver thing, is a ultrasonic cleaner. It sounds terrible, makes the bat that lives in this place mad. We have Bruce. So I don't use it a lot. And then back this way, I have pattern bars you can see down here that I haven't cut up. Next to them is the rock tumbler, which is under things. Chalk for slumping. Some spare pieces, empty boxes, and that's my apron for working on glass because I have actually had the hot glass when I torch work explode on me and it hurts. Those are ring molds that made one of my favorite pieces of glass, and I'm actually flip this around. Hello again, and I'm going to set my phone back in the hole and show you that piece of glass. This took me 6.5 hours to make. You know, I've been working on that, and that's what I've been using it for. If you give me a week, I'll have an answer for you, because I had some opaline, because like I said, I work with Bullseye, and opaline looks like clear until it's fired. And I screwed up a couple batches of hearts because I had opaline opaline scrap glass in my clear glass. So I went through on my kiln shelf and heat fired and struck all the colors of clear, and then picked out all the opaline. And so some of the pieces I did have kiln wash stuck, and I will be running them through the ultrasonic cleaner of the week. I just haven't had time. But yeah, it's actually not my original idea. There was a woman on the Fuse Glass Fanatics who did a blue one with more blue. Because as you can see with this, there's plenty of clear in it. She did a totally blue one like this, and I asked if she'd mind if I did my own take on it. So I did this piece. I used a stainless steel cake ring, and it took 6 hours. First time I screwed up because instead of it being perfectly aligned, I got about here, and they were kind of like, they weren't even. They were like, eh. So, honestly, Jackie, Lynn mentioned in the past using CLR. I tend to fire on thin fire because it works better, but at the same time, it causes problems. Getting the powder off, it takes forever. In fact, the video this week is going to be these guys making bees. And I had a lot of trouble. These eyes are tack fused on. Yeah, thin fire is expensive. But I tack fused several of these bees like this. I thought they were really cute. But their eyeballs all fell off because I'd put them in, I was full fusing other things, so I threw in dots. I threw in medium frit and bits of white glass to make dots. Well, apparently, despite wiping them off on a towel, I didn't wipe them off well enough, and so I fused all these bees and I picked them up. Their eyes all fell off. This is the only one I think that survived. So learn from my fail. Um, no, thin fire is expensive. Like I said, being near Bullseye, it's really easy for me to get. Yeah, see, there we go. Lynn says fires on papyrus, which I need to play with. Uses CLR with casting and jewelry molds to clean the zip off. I bet you it would work for dots. Also, if you're going to refuse your dots, you can put them in a container with vinegar, and that'll help. But like Lynn will probably mention, and she'd mentioned to me because we've been talking, vinegar can sometimes etch the surface of the dots. So if you're not planning on firing them at least to, I'd say 1300, they're not gonna want to clean up as well. Or they'll clean up just fine. They're not gonna want to fuse up shiny. Most everything I do is pretty affordable, or not affordable, pretty quick. So everything does get refused. And here's another project I recommend you guys consider if you want something quick and easy if you're trying to sell. These are water jet cut hearts. You can pick them up as I turn it around. It's transparent. You're going to see it on both sides. So, water jet cut hearts. Citric acid water. That's interesting. Will you get back to me and tell me how that works? Because I'm really curious. Because if that works, I will use it. We have citric acid here. We used to use it because we have a lot of iron in our water, and we'd use it to clean dishwashers back before we got stainless steel. Citric acid would take the iron off everything. You might also see about Barkeeper's Friend. That might work, but I'm not sure if it's going to... I'm not sure if Barkeeper's Friend would etch things. Fantastic. Yeah, let us know how it turns out. Even if you just come back to the live stream, because I'm going to make it public. If you come back and leave a comment, that way we can check. But yeah, I was suggesting these. These are water jet hearts. They're not cheap. They run you between $3 and $5 a piece. And then this came from the Water Jet Design Store on Etsy. I think they only do 90. And then this is from Blue Hill Glass Supply. But if you can get water jet cuts, these make super simple ornaments. I drill a little hole in them and hang, and I sell them for like $18. And I did cats and paw prints last year, and I sold like 6 or 8 of them. So they take almost no time. The cost per item is expensive. I mean, you're looking at, I want to say it was $10 for a set of 3 notes. So you are looking at like 6 or 7 to make. But since all you got to do is clean them and tack fuse them and then drill them or glue a bail, the actual amount of time you spend on them is really low, and they tend to sell between 18 and 20 really well. Like I said, I think I did 6 or 8 last year that sold, and with my Kickstarter this year, they were an add-on because they were something I could add on, people could order, that didn't cost an arm and a leg to make. And I think I sold 35. Do I do well on Etsy? I do much better on Kickstarter. I will tell you that. I'm not shy about what I make. Baking soda will break down plaster. It might work, but you use vinegar. Yeah, I might try baking soda too. And see, like I said, I've got to make a pile of dots. So we will see. I find what sells on Etsy are supplies. To be fair, there are a lot of glass folks on Etsy. I don't think the market's saturated, but there's a lot of folks, and there's a lot of race to the bottom. Like, even I was guilty of doing a soap dish, and I was charging like $16 or $15, and I'm like, you know what, this is ridiculous. A good soap dish should be $20, $25. So I raised my prices. And pricing is difficult. Like, this is actually for a custom order, and all this is copper blue streaky with it's got a clear top. And I'm doing 3 or 4 of these bowls. They're for a friend, so he gets a discount. So it's going to be $80 for the set. But on Etsy, what I'm finding sells more is supplies. My number one seller if you go to my Etsy shop, excuse me, you'll see I have some pins and stickers. They were a collab with a friend. We have our own shop now, and they're over there, but people still come back to my shop to buy things. So once they're gone, and they have been my best sellers. But if you're going glass, the thing that I sell the most of is copper oxide powder. I buy it 10 pounds at a time. Here, let me show you. I just put it in an empty 5-pound bucket from, this is a crystal clear transparent medium. And I just keep 10 pounds of it in a jar, and then I part it out. Largely I do half ounces just because most people don't need a couple ounces of powder unless they're really going into production. And if you're looking for 3 or 4 ounces of powder, you may as well look around online and find a 1-pound supplier. But ultimately what's selling for me is copper oxide, some of those little fused flowers. I just did a custom order for somebody. I have these, my cast flowers. She's doing a mosaic and she's going to show me when she's done, but I have these water jet cut flowers that are tiny. And so what I did is I fused little dots on them to make them centers of the flowers, and sent her some. But yeah, ultimately what I sell is copper oxide powder. Now, that's not the only thing I sell. I do occasionally sell a piece of glass, but I've maybe sold 10 pieces in the last year. I think part of the problem is glass just doesn't photograph that well, and people want to be able to hold their glass. Now, there are other places you can sell glass online. Maybe Mercari might be an option. I have a friend who sells wreaths on Mercari, and I want to talk to her about the process. My sister-in-law sells on Mercari as well. She's a clothing reseller. So I might ask her for some tips as well. I've not gotten any luck through Facebook Marketplace, but what ultimately happens is I'll get something cute, like last year's paw prints and cats. I'll post a picture of them, and then everybody goes, oh my god, I want one. And then I end up selling it. Usually don't sell out, but I sell a lot of what I have. Earlier this year, I did some, I can't find them. Oh no, there's one. Dun, 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 dun. Maybe, no, those are jellyfish. I thought I did some sun catchers in August, and it's still a pending order. I've got to get it to somebody, but I sold 4 of them right off the bat. So I actually find that my friends, when they see something they like, are far more likely to purchase from me than Etsy. I wouldn't try eBay because people are always just looking for a deal there. And honestly, I wouldn't try doing your own shop because you've got to drive traffic. So I would say that if you're looking to sell your glass on Etsy, good photos, use lots of search terms, use up all 13 of your keywords, and don't make the race to the bottom. Because honestly, the thing I've learned from listening to people who are successful on Etsy is if you have a good product, it'll show, and folks that are on Etsy aren't like folks on eBay or Amazon. They're not looking for a deal. They are looking for the perfect thing. You want things off Amazon because they're cheap and fast. You want things off eBay because you can get a deal on that, t-shirt that you wore 20 years ago that somebody may still have in their closet. But when you want something nice, handmade, because people still associate handmade with Etsy, even though it's not always the case, you go to Etsy. And I don't want to drop that because that is actually a commission. So yeah, I mean, Etsy is kind of, I don't know, I want to start doing more supplies. I actually have, is it here? No, it's on my cutting table, but I've got some little tiny Frit spoons I've been doing with lately, and I've been putting them in a vise and squishing them down so they look like drizzle spoons, but they're like that big, and they're super cute. And I want to list them on because I think they'd be useful, but again, it's supplies. How do I like posting on Etsy? It's a pain in my ass. I don't mind it, except that sometimes, now you're asking about the posting on Etsy? The only thing that sucks is sometimes it tells you you need to fill something out and it won't tell you what it is, so you've got to guess. The biggest thing I'm learning on Etsy is your photos sell. People don't read the description, so you should do what I am not doing, and I need to, and that is take a photograph and Photoshop in, or I'd use Canva because it's easy, and it's free. But edit in sizes because people do not always look at your listing descriptions. They're, especially if they're on mobile and things like that, they're shopping based on look, and so they might think your photograph of your piece is really great and then get it and think they're getting an 8-inch bowl and they're getting a 5-incher. I have not taught a volunteer class yet. I start on whatever the second Thursday is. I want to say that's November 10th. I start teaching, but I have been teaching out of my home for a year now. It started last year with the first Kickstarter. I sold a dozen hearts, but two of the folks that bought my hearts were local, and so I told, one was my friend Anna, and I told Anna, hey, come out, we'll make hearts. Why don't you just come out and make them? And so she came out and did all of her hearts, and I did necklaces, a set of necklaces, and a bowl, and she was real happy with that. 8. I cap out at 8. That's about as many people as I can babysit at a time. And I don't mean babysit like I've got to hold your hand, but I find that if I have more than 8, my attention is too split to give everybody the attention they deserve. Biggest class I've hosted so far is 7. But then, like I said, in 2021 I did Anna. And then I did my friend Matt and his wife, and and 2 of their 3 kids came out, and they had a great time. So this year in the Kickstarter, I sold 4 classes. And again, it was a tray of hearts, a tray of necklaces, and a 5-inch bowler plate. You either got an option like this, or you got an option like those shatter bowls I've shown where you could hit with a hammer, or I could give you a piece of glass, and you could do what you want with it. Some people made art. I had some trees pre-drawn out in frit and tack fired, so they could decorate trees, they could make their own art, etc. Yeah, really, I do recommend using putting the sizes on the photo because people are visual. They don't read. Nobody reads anymore. I read, but most people don't. So I taught the 4, and then this year I taught, my first class was Anna again, and that was 4 of them. And then Matt's didn't come, and in his place, his daughter brought her best friend, so I taught 4. And then another class was 6. And then another class was just 2. And the smaller the class, the more things I can give out, and we can do more things. Like the class of 2 did 2 trays of hearts. The class of 6 each did 1 tray. But word got out I'm teaching. People have been showing off their glass. And so I occasionally get a message. Hey, would you teach me a class? So I do the class, and it's a basic class. It's a tray of hearts, a tray of necklaces. They're colored of our necklaces molds, and then that 5-inch or a 6x4 art project or a 5-inch bowl. And to start this year, I've been charging $50. It essentially just covers the cost of the materials. I will be charging more next year. But I have taught, of the 4 classes, I've also taught an additional between 4 and 6. I don't remember exactly. So I'm up to 8 or 10 classes taught this year. I'm getting a handle for it. And I have some friends who are like, hey, we want to come. We don't want to do hearts because we've done hearts. What else can you offer? So now I've got to branch out and expand my offerings to different things. Because once they've taken the beginner's class, we can work with more interesting things. But yeah, I'm going to be teaching twice a month. It's going to be the 2nd and 4th Thursday of every month, except November, because the 4th Thursday is Thanksgiving. We're going to do the 2nd and 5th and do the 31st instead. What I'm going to do with Soul Flags is prefuse a lot of the stuff. So like the edges are soft so people don't cut themselves. Like, like this has been tack fused, so it's not going to slice up somebody's hand. So I'm going to do all of that, and then instead of having people cut and do their glass, it's going to be a 1-hour class. So what I'm going to do is prefuse a lot of elements so that we have squares and triangles and dots and things like that. I have not needed to travel yet, but with Soul Flags, I am not taking my kiln. That 16-inch I showed you is a 100-pound kiln. The 14-inch is a 70-pound kiln. I am not dragging them anywhere. Even if I could lift them, and I can, my wife can help me. I have enough trouble with them. That 16-inch Paragon with the 12 key fires 50 degrees too hot and struggles with anything over 1400 degrees on the readout, so anything over 1450. It's a real struggle to get things fused right in it, although I'm starting to get the hang of it. Generally, I use the 14-inch for full fuses. Tech fuses like a champ and slumps just fine. You get it, ask it for a full fuse and it screams. So what I'm gonna do is I've got, and it's out in my shop, way out there where I'd go get it, is I've got little bottles of hairspray ready and tweezers, and I'm just gonna have people assemble their projects and glue them down with hairspray, and then the next day I'm gonna come and get them. And once they've dried, take them home and fuse them. And like the fused glass corn that Equinox Glass did, and she gave me the permission to adapt the glass for the class, which was great. Because if she hadn't, I would have come up with something else. They're going to go in the kiln and tack fuse. So that'll be easy, and I can use the big kiln and they'll come back the next day. I don't drive that smart anymore, so I'm a little bit luckier. I have a Mini Cooper, and it has much better suspension than the Tonka toy turned plastic car that I used to drive. Yeah, I love that smart and actually still have it. I need to get rid of it. But seriously, it has no shocks. And it's a rough ride. But the Mini Cooper is much smoother, and I'm just going to put them in like boxes. And probably what I'll do is I'll wrap each one in a towel. Oh yeah, I went from a car that is 8.5 feet long to a car that is 13.5 feet long. But is also wider, and actually I have a back seat in my Mini. You don't want to put anybody in it. I've put my wife in it because we took my grandmother to a Cirque du Soleil show. And we stuffed her in the back. We stuffed Cassie in the back and my grandmother up front. And Cassie's like, you don't want to ride in the back of this car. But you can. So, yeah. We're small car people, which is funny because we drive semi. She does too. She was my co-driver for 4.5 years when we were over the road. I wouldn't go driving with anybody else. But yeah, we go from the biggest thing on the road to one of the smaller things. But by the way, Mini Coopers are fantastic. Portland does not get a whole lot of snow. Generally, we get kind of a cool weather. The winters are 30s, 40s, and wet. And then we get 1 or 2 instances of about 2 weeks where it gets ultra cold and snows or ices up. And we get 1 or 2 instances of those usually in January, February. My driveway is actually a gravel road, and it's a half-mile long, and it's a very steep to get out of. My mother can contest, or not contest, can confirm this one. She is not my grandmother's daughter. That's my dad's mom that I live with, but my mom comes down all the time because my parents aren't together anymore, but they've been apart long enough that the whole family can be copacetic. But my mom's come down, and she can attest that the driveway is extremely steep. So when it snows, we stay home. And the nice thing is, because I test trucks, prototypes are expensive. They don't want to risk them, and they don't want to risk drivers. So we don't work. They're like, nope, you're not working. And I work nights and weekends, so I work Friday through Monday night. Pretty much, you'll notice that I almost never put up a video Friday evening through Tuesday morning, because I work, I sleep, I work, I sleep. Driving trucks very tiring. But when it snows, they just have us all stay home, which is great. Yeah, they freak out over 2 inches of snow, but Northwest folks in general, yes. The city of Seattle, which is 3 hours north of us, has 3 snowplows. Portland can get them from the mountain because Mount Hood is close. I think it's closer than Rainier is to Seattle. But if they take them from the mountain, then the mountain gets full of snow and nobody gets by. And they maintain it. They don't actually close. It's Highway 26 that goes up and over the mountain, and they maintain it, and it doesn't necessarily close much over the winter. But Portland, they'll shut Portland down. They'll tell you, if you get stuck on a freeway, we're not coming to get you. And a lot of Portland's freeways are elevated. Now, the 205 that runs around it is not so much, although there's several bridges. But for whatever reason, because Portland's set on the river, almost everything in Portland is an elevated freeway, and so they ice up really, really badly. My favorite thing to do is to make a hot drink, pull up tripcheck.com, which is the road report for Oregon, and sit there and watch the road cameras and watch everybody get stuck. I know that's terrible because I'm getting shot on Florida, but one of my favorite things is to just watch the city's traffic go to shit. I know, I'm not very nice sometimes. But yeah, to answer your question, Lynn, about Etsy, I don't mind Etsy. Etsy's fees are about 9.5%. My biggest problem is getting the listings up because, like I said, a lot of people don't read the listings, and I try to include as much information as possible in the description box. And if anybody's thinking about opening an Etsy shop and has not yet, let me know. I'll post a link in the description once I do this. If you use my link, you get 40 free listings. And I get 40 free listings if you open a shop. So we both win. It's about $8. Think of it as a discount of about $8, which is not bad. But like in my case, we were selling these pins for the video game Disco Elysium, and so those 40 free listings I got from somebody else opening a shop really helped because we sold out of 100 of the pins. So it saved me $8 out of 20 for the listing. So I mean, every little bit helps, especially since we're probably headed into a recession. So, I mean, now you got the history on me. This live stream's been going a while. I mean, I can keep going if people want, or we can end it here. I appreciate everybody who's tuned in. That's been really great of you. I literally thought it would be my mother and Lynn. So to have anybody else here has been really, really cool. I have stuff prepared, like I said, although I will answer, some people have had questions like, do I collaborate? And my mother and I talk things over a lot, but we don't directly collaborate. Although it would be kind of fun to maybe have her start something and me finish it, or me start something and her finish it. My mom does more art pieces. Let me go grab them. I have a couple here. But my mother does art pieces. I am a lot more practical. I like bowls and other things like that. I like glass I can use. Not that I don't like to do art, and art is beautiful, but like my mother did this, and this is probably my favorite piece my mom's done. Isn't that gorgeous? What type of wire stays silver when fused? Are you talking in the glass or at the end? Because I am not real sure. And then she did this, and this is actually royal purple. But isn't that pretty? And she got real nice points on the moon. This was one of her early projects. What sort of wire? I have nichrome here, but I don't generally put wire in my glass. I am more of a say lots of swear words and drill it person. Although, I mean, I would try nichrome high temp. Because that would be what I would guess would be the best thing I could think of, Jerry. No, there is a lot of curse words in the shop. I have right now I've got in the glass. You know, I don't know, because like I said, I don't do a lot of wire in the glass. I know silver doesn't. Because I've worked with silver foil and it turns funny colors. So I don't know. I will ask around and get back to you. I am a klutz, so I have a big scrape right here. And I'll hook you up with my mom, Lynn. And a scrape right here. It's on top of another injury that I got from a piece of glass that tried to take my knuckle off. I have an L-shaped scar here from thinking a piece of glass was fiber paper and it turned out to be white glass. So I'm a klutz. And by the way, if you look in my videos, occasionally you'll see on this hand when I'm working there is a tattoo. They're fake. They're from Inkbox. I don't have any ink. I don't actually have any tattoos, but I love them, so I frequently use fake ones because I'm trying to settle on designs and wear. So I put brass stays brass if it's encased in glass. But yeah, silver, my biggest problem with silver is I would think it would oxidize in the process when the heat's applied and turn brown. If you used actual silver, it would turn gray. Yeah, chrome does not stay silver, but you can polish it up. How does it look in the glass, though? You know, I don't know. That's a good question about glass. Because like with this one, my mom put the bail on the back, and you can't see them. Do I have them right here? No, I don't have them, but My mom has, in one of my videos, and I'll include the link, is a little clear plastic bales. Speaking of first projects, there goes the finger frit. Let me clean this up real quick. This is one of my first projects. And this is that purple. You can't really see. I'll pull it towards the light. This is that gold, that royal purple with the irid and the white that I bought the very first time I fused. This is one of my very first pieces that I fused, and I used Aquila. So I ended up buying my own kiln. This one turned out nice. The corners are all perfect and all of that. You know, honestly, I'm not sure, but like I said, I'll ask around and post it in the comments from this live stream. So check back in a couple of days. Other questions is, do I do custom orders? And almost everything I do is a custom order because, again, I don't sell a lot of glass. I give most of mine away. Yes, firing metal should have a dedicated shelf. And if nothing else, you can use a pizza stone. If you're not firing big, you could use just like a pizza stone or a tile. Fuse it first, though. Run it in your kiln empty on a full fuse or whatever, about 15 degrees higher than whatever you plan on fusing, to make sure that your test tile of whatever sort will hold up. You always want to run, like when you burn in a kiln, when you get it, you want to run it 25 degrees higher than the top temperature you ever plan on operating it, because that way it'll burn out all the binders. But yeah, since I sell mostly supplies, any of the glass I do sell tends to be custom orders. I do have a fair bit up in on Etsy, but like I said, I haven't sold more than maybe 10 pieces this year. What I do a lot of is hearts. The reason that I'm Steph Fuses on YouTube, but everywhere you look, I am the Art by Queen of Hearts, because in 18 months I did 2,000 hearts. I figure that 2,000 hearts in 18 months kind of earns me a title of Queen of Hearts. I'm not the only one, I'm sure. But also I started the 100 Hearts Project, which is also my Facebook page. And it is where I give away 100 hearts at least a year in the Portland area or wherever I happen to be. And so I have the hearts. The first year I did it, I just had the hearts in little baggies and left them around. But this year I have them with a little backing card with a QR code that goes to the Facebook group. And I've actually given away something like 300 hearts this year. So that is ultimately my best selling thing, because the Kickstarter made me almost $10,000 this year and made me $3,800 last year. So I've seen nearly $14,000 from hearts. So if you want to know what sells best, find yourself a great idea, pitch it on Kickstarter. It needs to be simple to make, inexpensive in items and cost, and have some sort of universal appeal. So honestly, a thing to be good, especially if you're a member of the LGBTQIA community, is something related to that. That was actually what I was going to do for 2022, was going to be pride plates. But instead I just did pride hearts in addition to regular hearts. So yeah, that's ultimately where my money comes from. And that's, other than the fact that I do customs, that's where most everything comes from. Somebody asked what my weirdest request was, and to me it was cremains. I still have not worked with cremains. There are several people who have asked me, and I'm going to start, because from what I understand, especially with pets, people really want to have their cremains into a necklace or something. So I'm going to start working with that. I've been doing a lot of research on it. No, I don't work other than 90. Like I said, I'm working with Spectrum for fuse glass for the class at Soul Flags. But other than one class of borosilicate, everything in my shop is 90. It makes it really easy. I don't mix anything up. As you can see, I'm a chaos monster. So can you imagine what would happen if I tried to mix 90 and 96? And I don't care what some people have said, and I've heard in the past that some people are like, well, if you're really slow heating it and cooling it, you can mix 90 and 96. I wouldn't do it. They are real close in coefficient. But I do believe that even if you're careful, you're going to get stuff under stress. So I would be very careful about mixing those two. And I definitely wouldn't add 104. I've never worked with 104, but I have been watching what Mark Lautner does with those ring Marini vases or Marini bowls. They're gorgeous, and I don't necessarily want to make bowls, but I want to do stuff with that. So what I might do is, depending on how well the Kickstarter works and how busy I am next year, save up the money to order 100 kilograms of glass from the Afridi factory, um, and actually play with coefficient 104. That's 220 pounds. That's a lot. You have by accident and it's not good. And crackle, crackle, crackle. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like not annealing something properly. It might be fine for 5 minutes or 5 years. But down the line somewhere, you got a chance it's going to crack. People have asked if I worked in other mediums other than glass. I'm a glass user. I write. I haven't written this year, but during the pandemic, I wrote a lot. Nothing published, although I do the occasional like word search book and things like that, but nothing. It was all written for personal pleasure and enjoyment, so nothing published. But I do write. And somebody else asked my favorite color. It's purple, and in all forms. I love purple in all forms. Now, the most glass I have, I keep in blues, greens, and purples, which means I've got a fairly expensive set of glass because if pinks, purples are made with gold. And I have a fair bit of gold. This is, like I showed you the edge on this one, it is cranberry pink, gold purple, white streaky, and soft ripple. This was curious, but this was price code F from Bullseye, which is G is the most expensive. This is the second to most expensive glass. I have 2 sheets of this. I have this busted sheet and a half sheet. But I have some really beautiful purples, blues, and greens mostly. And I love to work in red. Red is also one. Not so much in the yellows and oranges, although I do have a fair bit. And I've got some pinks. And I recommend that if you're starting, everybody in here seems to be a glass artist. But if you're watching this and you want to get started in glass, black, white, clear, 2 or 3 colors of opalescent, which is the non-transparent, and 2 or 3 colors of transparent, and make sure they're all happy colors that play together. So do a pink, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, something you can mix the colors, and you're good to go. I think that's a good place to start. Does anybody else have questions? What's the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? And that all depends on if it's African or European. But while I wait to see if any questions pop in, this is what I've been doing this week. This is a soup bowl from Olive Garden. It is full of these little tiny dots. There's mostly browns and oranges and yellows in here, although I did chunk up some of that cranberry because it's going to be good. It's going to be the Harvest Corn colors for the Equinox glass class. I can't wait to show them. I can't wait to show her. Sorry, I'm pretty sure she uses she, her pronouns. I can't wait to show Equinox glass the end results. I will definitely photograph them and do a quick little video so you guys can see how they turned out. And I will tag Equinox glass in it because without that video, I never would have had an idea for November. I would have had to be hand cutting out pumpkins out of a sheet of orange glass, and I didn't want to do that. So, since everybody is quiet at this point, I think this is a good place to end it. This went on a lot longer than I was thinking, and I'm glad I prepared a script even though we didn't use it. Hi, Grandpa, how are you? My mother is watching, and my grandfather, her father, is watching with us. Those are my number 1 and 2 fans. Number 3 is probably my wife. But my mother is my number 1 fan. She and I share a lot of glass. She originally started with a mix of Bullseye and then some pieces in 96, but because my glass collection has grown over the years, she has switched to mostly Bullseye these days. I'm glad he said hello. I love you, Grandpa and Mom. But yeah, my collection is all Bullseye, and so my mother has progressed over to the Bullseye side of things for years, and we share. Thank you, Lynn. I was hoping this was going to be good, and I'm actually surprised people showed up that weren't you and my mother, but Jackie and Jerry and everybody else who was here, and Jameson, who had to go. I appreciate you showing up. Yes, I give you a lot of glass. We share, but I also end up giving her a lot of glass. Jerry, you're welcome. I have 2 on plan right now. This week I'm going to be posting the bees. But next week what I'm going to do is one with stacked squares. because I did a really pretty simple plate and I think it's fun. And then the week after that, it's also going to be squares, but we're going to be doing kind of a like a checkerboard design with one color in it. And I'm also going to do a plate that I'm going to show you how you can use a square design to go further. And I'm going to put together a Tetris plate. My wife and I were talking about how 8-bit would be really cool. So I'm going to put together a Tetris plate as well to show you that squares don't have to be boring. So those are going to be my plans because unfortunately I have shiny syndrome and it's real difficult for me to focus on one thing, but I've got the next 3 projects. The bees one is mostly filmed. It'll be up later this week. I've just got to film the end of it. And then I will be working on the other 2 this week so they can go up the week and the week after. Next week and the week after. But thank you all for coming. This has been a fantastic success and I am just beyond thrilled that it worked. So thank you all and I will see you next time.